Which cantrip is the best cantrip? This week we decide which cantrips are sitting at the top of the bottom of the spellcasting barrel. Hello players and GMs, I am Reese and welcome to another video by Jetpack7. Before we get started today, I just want to remind you all that our Blackstorm Realms beta is still going on. If you haven't heard of it until now, or if you missed the Kickstarter, go ahead and click the link in the description to help us build this amazing book. And as usual, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and to hit the notification bell. It would mean the absolute world to me, as you know, because all I do is sit at home and watch the numbers grow. I don't do that, but it would mean a lot. A while ago, I posted a video ranking the best spells at each level, and while I enjoyed making the video, a lot of the comments I received expressed dissenting opinions. And I don't mind dissenting opinions. In fact, they kind of made me realize how terribly impossible it is to pick one spell from these levels and say that it is objectively the best one. So this week, I'm starting another series. Each video, I'm going to pick my top 10 spells from that level and explain why they are, in my opinion, the best spells. Pretty simple stuff. I figure this will give a better picture of what spells are actually really great at that level because spell strength varies so massively depending on the situation. For example, Fireball isn't really great when you and your party are squished into a 20 by 20 room. It's still one of the best spells in the game, but in that situation, it is absolutely one of the worst. Unless your goal is to kill your own party, I guess. Anyway, today we are starting with the lowest level spells in the game, the Cantrips. Cantrips are great because they are the spells you can cast whenever you want. They don't cost anything, so they're either the spells you spam out of combat or the spells you weave in between your leveled spells during combat. They're the filler for spellcasters, but many of them pack a surprising punch, both with damage and utility. So let's jump right in with number 10, Shocking Grasp. I mentioned Shocking Grasp in one of my previous videos as a spell I think is underrated. You may think, when would I, a squishy-ishy wizard, ever get into melee range to shock a creature? To which I say, you don't. They get into melee range with you. And then I point at the second part that says this creature cannot take reactions if the spell hits, allowing you to run away freely without taking an attack of opportunity. It is basically a get out of jail free card for when you've got a monster in your face, and squishy-ishy spellcasters could always use another get out of jail free card. Next up is Booming Blade. Booming Blade is an awesome cantrip that I honestly think fits better with non-full caster classes that are able to dip into the wizard spellbook, see Arcane Trickster. It's already great to start, pretty much very forcefully encouraging one creature to just stay where they are for a turn. That said, it gets even better at 5th level when it also adds additional damage to the initial attack, and the damage for moving increases by an additional d8. So now at 5th level, your attack is dealing your normal weapon damage plus a d8, and then if the target moves, they'll take another 2d8 with just one attack. That is a huge amount of damage for how little it takes. The only reason I'm not putting this up closer to the top is that it is kind of a niche cantrip that isn't nearly as powerful in the hands of a caster who is focused on their spellcasting ability. It is extremely potent in the right hands, but much less likely to do anything in the hands of a wizard with 10 strength, you know what I mean? Next up, we've got Light. There isn't too much to say about Light other than the fact that it is the easiest and most reliable solution for a lack of dark vision. If you're playing a race that doesn't get dark vision but has access to cantrips, taking Light will solve a lot of your problems by giving you a permanent torch, essentially, that you can also cast on projectiles and stuff. You can cast Light on a rock and throw it into a dark room or drop it down a hole. It offers a lot more utility than a torch, plus it isn't concentration, and you can cast it as much as you want. Something I don't usually see done with the spell is that you can also target an object a creature is wearing or carrying. They can try to avoid it with a dex save, but if you're chasing a stealthy creature, that might be a pretty cool way to make sure they aren't hiding anywhere. Otherwise, yeah, being able to see in a dark place is pretty huge, so this one definitely belongs up here. After Light, I have Minor Illusion. Minor Illusion is a spell that can actually offer a surprising amount of utility. It may be relatively wasteful to use during combat, but if you find yourself in need of a distraction during a sleuth moment, there isn't a better cantrip than Minor Illusion. You can create any sound, essentially, which can be a pretty awesome way to create a diversion or whatever deceptive thing you may need in that moment. Plus, this is a much more advanced version of the pulling a chair out from someone prank, and pranks are always an excellent use for cantrips. And now we get to another pretty potent combat cantrip, Spare the Dying. This one isn't dealing any damage, but it is preventing your party from getting killed, which is obviously pretty huge. Now, I know in the hands of a Grave Cleric it is even more powerful, but even completely disregarding that, I think this cantrip belongs up here no matter what. It leaves the target unconscious, so it's not like it's going to pop them back up, but it also prevents them from making death saves, which can be an absolute game changer. It is a stalling mechanism that allows you to relax instead of just praying that your dying ally doesn't roll poorly too many times in a row while you're trying to get to them to funnel a healing potion down their throat. And then whenever you need, you can pop a point of healing in them and they're up and ready to go. After Spare the Dying, I have placed the wizard's go-to, the longest range, highest damage cantrip that any class besides Warlock has access to, Firebolt. It has to be up here because in terms of the numbers, this is the best cantrip, second only to Eldritch Blast, for damage at least. It deals a d10 of fire damage with a range of 120 feet. Again, there isn't a whole lot to say about Firebolt. If you need a damage cantrip to fill the gaps between your bigger spellcasts, then this is absolutely the best one for the money. There are a few cantrips that deal a d12 of whatever damage type, but their range isn't anywhere near 120 feet, so it just isn't as safe or reliable. That's basically all there is to it. Firebolt is a very strong, reliable cantrip for dealing damage. You can't go wrong with it, which absolutely makes it deserving of a top 5 placement. And now we've reached the top 4. All of these are amazing cantrips for different reasons. The way I thought about this is that if I could pick any 4 cantrips to have access to for any character, these are the ones I would choose. Starting out with one of my personal favorites, Mage Hand. This is one that gets so much use that I almost forget it's a cantrip and not just part of a character's abilities. The value of this kind of speaks for itself. Opening doors, chests, containers, etc. from 30 feet away can be a lifesaver in the right situation. Again, I'm not even really taking into account the bonuses Arcane Trickster can add to Mage Hand, but even without all this stuff, this cantrip is super valuable. Sometimes there are traps you simply can't disarm if you even know that they're there at all, and being able to play it safe and stand way back can save you a lot of trouble in a dungeon. Also, in the hands of a clever player and an open-minded GM, this cantrip can have some combat utility as well, though that part is a little bit more limited by the fact that it can't carry more than 10 pounds of stuff. That said, a 10-pound vase being lobbed at a monster's head might actually hurt quite a bit, so you never know. All of this together definitely justifies Mage Hand as one of the more useful cantrips in the game, earning it a top 4 spot for sure. In third place, I put the best damage cantrip in the game, Eldritch Blast. Eldritch Blast at base is already a little better than Firebolt because it deals force damage instead of fire, which is a damage type much less commonly resisted in 5e. Add to that the possibility of invocations, and suddenly this cantrip is your main form of damage, and an extremely consistent and powerful one at that. Not to mention that many of the invocations not only add damage, but utility to it, allowing you to knock creatures back, increase its range, or reduce the target's speed. This is the Tipman custom of cantrips. Wow, that was a reference I didn't know I still had in my brain. Which makes it easily the most potent damaging cantrip in the game. The fact that at base it is already a little better than Firebolt already places it pretty highly, but adding to it the kind of power it gets from invocations would make it an absolute crime not to place it in the top 3. The only reason it isn't number 1 is because only Warlocks can use it barring special circumstances, and it can only get a little bit stronger if you take Eldritch Adept from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. So it is definitely limited in its power, but it is still so strong otherwise that it belongs near the top. And we've reached the top 2. Those of you who watched my previous spell rankings video will laugh at this one because in second place I have put Message. I'll explain why that's funny in a bit, but my reasoning is very much the same as it was before. Communication is such a huge aspect of Dungeons and Dragons, and being able to freely communicate with your allies from a distance and in a way that prevents any other creatures from being able to hear you is a huge boon. This can allow you to plan spur-of-the-moment action right in front of the enemy you're about to face, and they will have no idea what you're talking about. The only improvement to this is literal telepathic communication, which is mostly granted through either racial features or relatively high-level spells. The telepathic bond spell is 5th level, so this is basically a junior version of that because it isn't going to come in handy as much during combat, but outside of combat it can serve dang near the very same purpose without costing you any spell slots. The sheer amount of value this cantrip gets in any campaign I've ever played in is pretty insane, honestly, so that is why I have a hard time placing this anywhere outside of the top 2. In such a social game as D&D, I find that a cantrip that allows you to communicate freely will be an amazing tool for your party, and makes this cantrip pretty dang hard to beat. But, in my opinion, it does get beaten by one cantrip. Let me explain. I know what you all are thinking. Reese, you literally ranked Message as the best cantrip in 5e like 5 videos, and I know I did, but I changed my mind. I'm human, okay? Let this serve as proof that I read your comments, because a lot of people commented saying that this cantrip is the strongest one, and the more I thought about it, I simply had to agree. The best cantrip in 5e for my money is Guidance. Guidance allows you to add a d4 to pretty much any skill check you make, which is obviously very good. Sure, sometimes there's a spur of the moment skill check and there's no way you could have 6 seconds to cast a spell before making that check, but the majority of the time you definitely can. Unlocking a door? Add a d4 to that. Scanning a room for invisible intruders? Add a d4. Need to climb a wall? Take 6 seconds and add a d4 to that athletics check, you puny little cleric, you. The fact that you can not only give it to yourself, but other creatures opens up the options for this cantrip so dang much. Skill checks are such a huge part of successful D&D moments, and gaining a slight advantage to the large majority of skill checks you make can be an absolute game changer. Over the course of any given session, you can probably add a d4 to at least 75% of the checks you're making, which is just a ridiculous amount of value considering how important certain checks can be. Any experienced D&D player knows how crucial skill checks are. I'm thinking stealth checks, lockpicking checks, perception checks. You can add a d4 to all of those. No other cantrip adds this sort of value to your party, in my opinion, which certifiably places this one at the top of the list. Yes, past Reese, even above Message. Alright, those are the top 10 cantrips in 5e in my book. Let me know in the comments any other cantrips you have in your top 10 that I may have missed here. If you enjoyed this video, please consider clicking the like button and subscribing to the channel, and as always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you around.